Hello. Hello. Can I share this? How do I share this from here? Well, it doesn't look like I can share this from here, so I'll just have to share it later. Actually, I will grab my computer while we're all right here. Hold on. I'll be back. You can see me get up and down. I pinned myself in this corner because it's comfortable and then I can have light here, but the tripod is pinning me in the corner. So I want to talk about who you are. Who you are. Who are you? Who are you? Seriously, who are you? And if you're like me, we kind of get like a little bit of split personality on the answer, right? We've got, well, I'm me, I've got this, I'm me, I'm like who I am, I've got this body and this personality and blah, 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 blah. And then we've got, well, but I'm everything and I'm life and I'm spirit and I'm consciousness and I'm, so much more than just this. And we get this little disconnect, right? Let me just make sure I can hear myself. Yeah. And we get this little disconnect, right? And for so many people, particularly people who are interested in spiritual topics, and so perhaps are reading a lot in the self-development world, because spirituality and self-development, same thing. Expansion of consciousness, same thing, right? When we start in that realm, a lot of what you might hear is about transcending the ego. And so we might end up in this quite contentious relationship with the self. Because here, this body, this mind, this way of thinking, this way of looking at the world, this way of interpreting the world and integrating our lessons and, understanding and learning and growing and all of that happens through the lens of the ego. And yet, we're told to transcend the ego, right? Move beyond yourself. Don't be so focused on this person. Don't be attached to this. Non-attachment. Transcending, blah, blah, blah. We hear these terms, and what can happen is we end up in sort of a spiritually hate-filled relationship with ourselves, but really deeply buried. Because at the same time, we're told to love ourselves and, expand and all of this stuff. So there's a push and a pull and this like tension that shows up between our spiritual growth and understanding of who we are as a person and this personality-driven who we are as a person. And you're both. You're both and more and less and everything and all at once, right? You're all of that. And so you may feel like you swing between different aspects of yourself. And that's fine. It's fine. It's normal, right? Because you are simultaneously this personality who can get jealous and petty and sarcastic and, all riled up about traffic, and you're all of that at the same time as you're magnanimous and generous and compassionate and loving and can hold an incredible space and connection with somebody else at the same time as you're also all the other things that can know beyond knowing and feel beyond feeling and know that you have this ability to channel life through you. You're all of that. You're all of that. So when we set ourselves up to say that we're trying to get somewhere, so say that if your goal is spiritual awakening, spiritual enlightenment, a lot of times that implies that we're trying to get rid of this, right? That we're trying to get rid of the body. And at least in yoga, when we talk about enlightenment, we're talking about a state of being that checks out of the physical realm. And I imagine that most of us would love to live in a more enlightened way, but without dying, because then it ruins all the fun, right? And that's okay. It's okay to want those two things, even though they go against each other. So my focus is to talk about enlightened living, not enlightened dying, right? Because then what can happen is we actually hold ourselves back from the very changes and growth that we want to see, because subconsciously we're afraid that if we reach that level of revelation in ourselves, if we reach that level of comfort where we understand how to merge at the same moment the individual and the universal consciousness, that we're going to check right out of here, right? So we hold ourselves back and we sort of flip back and forth between the two different ways of being and ways of knowing, and then we give ourselves whiplash and it doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel very good. So we want to talk instead about enlightened living, Because enlightened living is where we can bring all of these levels of awareness, into play in your life right now. And enlightened living is where we find the space and acceptance to realize, like, yeah, you're human. You've got some human stuff going on. And human stuff includes all sorts of emotions that we may deem as lesser emotions or lower emotions, but really they're just in this massive spectrum of feeling. And feeling is our way of moving through the world. This body that we are in, that you're in, has senses. And we also have the six senses, right? We have intuitive senses, but this body communicates with the world through sensation. And that means the world communicates with you through sensation. Sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, right? These are all of the ways that we interact, and our body gifts us that. So we might talk about lower level emotions or heavier emotions and assume that that means they're bad. And get mad at ourselves if we're there, or get mad at ourselves that we're not refined enough, or get mad at ourselves that we're still carrying all of that. And those emotions are still the gift of interacting with life. They're still the gift of learning about who you are. They're still the gift of experiencing yourself in every moment. And when we sort of drop the anger, when we drop the bitterness and resentment towards our lower selves, right? Our human selves, our ego mind, then we can really open up to a new level of being where we're not fighting all the time. We're not fighting with ourselves. We're not fighting with who we are. We're not fighting with life. Like, why'd you make me go through this instead of just letting me live in the realms of the upper heart and the intuition and the mind and the spirituality? You know, why do I have to go through this life? If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Why does it have to be so painful here? You know, we can get over that argument and that tension, which takes up so much of our energy when we're just fighting. Like, why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to go through this? And realize that all the physical experiences are the spiritual experiences, because the only way that we communicate and integrate and experience is through this body, and this mind and these emotions and these thoughts and these interpretations and these meanings, right? And so going back to yesterday, if you didn't see yesterday's video about your purpose, it's the meaning that we get to make. It's the meaning that we get to make about our experiences. That they mean that we're bad, that we're unevolved, that we're just not there yet, that we're not as enlightened as we want to be. Or we interpret experiences as like, this is how enlightened I am, right? Look at me being all compassionate and all knowing. But that's still through the ego mind. Right? It's still through the personality lens that we have on our life, because that's the only lens that we have. And it doesn't mean you can't have moments and glimpses of truth beyond that lens. But your lens is still the perspective that allowed you to get to the point where you saw the truth beyond that lens. Do you get what I'm getting at? So when you're fighting with yourself about who you are, am I this blissed out, peaceful, spiritual experience in life? Or am I this real, raw, earthy, guttural thing? Yes. The answer is yes. And you get to choose the meaning that you make of that. So you get to choose if you're upset about certain aspects of who you are. You get to choose if you think that they're permanent and unchangeable. You get to choose if you identify yourself more with one aspect of your being or another, right? And I think this part about you get to choose how permanent each piece is really important, because many of us think and feel and believe that stuff's just locked in. Like, oh, I'm just like that. Like, oh, I just, I got my humor from my dad and I'm just like that. But we're not. Everything is adaptable. Everything is moldable. And everything on this level, on the level where we combined the physical with the spiritual, the energetic with the tangible, the subtle with the gross, meaning gross level, right? When we combine those two things, that's where we have the opportunity to shift and shape and choose. So, who are you? Who are you? Right? I know who you are. I know who you are. I know who all of us are. We are expressions of life, living through bodies, Just like a blade of grass is an expression of life living through grass, like the blade of grass next to it and the blade of grass next to it and the blade of grass next to it. I know that you are life, and I know that I am life, and we are animated by life, and that animation gets to so beautifully filter itself through this and this, through personality, through your ego, right? In those terms, if you use the term ego in your life, I mean the personality, through your perspective, through your lens on the world. And that is the gift that you're giving to life. Life is giving you the gift of life, and in return, you're giving the gift of your perspective. So your perspective isn't anything that we necessarily need to change. The only time we might want to look at it is if life has kind of stagnated a bit in you, right? And you're like, I can feel this like heaviness. I want to grow it out. I want to move around. I want to try something new. Then the changes that you make, the shifts that you make, the path of growth that you go on is still a gift to yourself. Not because you're broken or flawed or something's wrong or your ego is something to transcend, but because the way that you are choosing to approach it, hey Janet, the way that you are choosing to approach it isn't fulfilling you anymore. It's not giving you the spiritual growth and expansion that life wants to have coming through you. Hey, two of my favorite ladies. Hi, Melissa. So we're just talking about the difference between the ego and the spiritual life, right? The individual consciousness and the universal consciousness. And this sort of tension that we can get into trying to identify ourselves with one or the other and sort of arguing with the interplay and the heaviness that the ego carries in so many spiritual circles. I personally am a giant ego lover because I don't have any other way to look at the world. I don't have any other way to interpret the world. And then there's tension when we want to shift. Are we shifting? Are we choosing to grow from a place of trying to self-perfect because we'd rather identify a certain other way, or we'd rather be in this, ethereal space? Why do I have to be in this body? So I'm going to punish it into being perfect like I feel that my spiritual self is. Right? That's very different than saying, I understand that I'm both. I understand that my experience of life is limited to literally my tangible, physical, sensual experience of life. And at the same time, life is living through me and beyond me and so much bigger than me. And there's this huge context that I can tap into and feel beyond the knowingness of the tactile body sense. And so I'm going to move towards that, right? I'm going to see what else is possible. I'm going to open up my mind to think a slightly different way. I'm going to choose a different thought and see what that gets me. Like, there's making choices from a place of understanding the duality of existence, the physicalness of existence and the spiritualness of existence, versus trying to perfect ourselves or punish ourselves into certain ways of being because we somehow don't like the physicality or we don't like the spirituality. Right? And so we're shutting down and trying to contain and conform instead of exploring that creative tension between life and me, spirit and me, right? God and me. And, anybody, I think all of us are artists in the way that we are creative. And that creative tension is where we start fires and burn ourselves up or burn ourselves forward, right? Burning that momentum. So, who are you? Who are you? Are you, at this moment, choosing to be one thing or another? In this moment, are you frustrated? Are you frustrated with a certain aspect of life? Maybe it's your body, maybe it's your thoughts, maybe it's your emotions, maybe it's being stuck in a pattern. We all get that. We all have that at some point. Like, I'm frustrated that my posture is still like this after all this time, right? Or I'm frustrated that I still keep thinking thoughts in the same way about one topic all the time. But these are things we can shift. And when I realized, at least for myself, I'll speak for myself, that those areas that were taking up so much energy on an ego level, on a personality level, posture, body, weight, money, relationships, love, all at work, like all of those dynamics that take our drama, they take our energetic attention. When I realized that those were just the gifts of life to grow, it freed me up to stop hating the drama, right? To stop being so angry at it for existing because I don't want to have it in my life because I'm actually this spiritual experience, and why do I have to deal with this? And one of my fundamental beliefs about how I approach my work and how I approach my life is that I trust life. I trust life. I trust life to give me exactly the thing that I need, the best possible experience, in order to have the exact experience that I want on a spiritual level. That doesn't mean I want that experience on this level, right? On the human level. In fact, most of the time, I'm pretty annoyed. Like, really? Did I need to learn patience? That way. Did I need to learn about power? That way. You know, the drama is the gift. The drama is life's gift for spiritual growth. But the drama is only experienced in this form. And when this form fights it, because we know that we're actually spiritual beings, so why do I have to deal with this? Now we're butting heads, right? We're butting heads with the two aspects of ourselves. And we've made an implied judgment about this beingness, this being. And we very, very subtly said to ourselves, to our bodies, to our lives, I'm better than this. And, you know, I don't want to, all of us have experienced people, right, who feel like the spiritual realm is so much better than their life. And you may have had that before. I know I've certainly flirted with that in my life of like, why do I have to be here and deal with all this? But they're both true at the same time. They're both happening at the same time. And the way that we experience, just flat out the way that we experience our knowing, whether it's a beyond sensation or not, we experience that through the being. And so the being is the inherent gift of knowing, and the knowing is the gift that it's given to the being. There's always the two parts in interplay. And I invite you, when you think about, well, who have I been? Who have I been for myself? Who am I being for myself in this moment? Are we being in, a tense relationship with the beingness of this experience? Of our emotions, of our bodies, of our frustrations. Like, when you have road rage, are you blaming yourself and mad at yourself, or you're like, whoa, that's a lot of power coming through? Interesting. You know, we can use every single thing that life gives us, because I trust life. Use single thing that life gives us. Put on the lens of life is helping us on our spiritual evolution. Put on the glasses like that and look at every single thing and go, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed. Perfect. I just got that. Oh my gosh, you're connecting dots for me all over the place on a level of knowing that has to be integrated on the level of being, right? We can know something. I believe that we're born knowing everything. Everything. I believe that all of us know on a deep, deep level that we are universally connected, and all of us are life living through us through these little bodies, right? And yet there's an integrated being. And that's knowing in action. That's knowing in this knowing, right? It's when the truth that's in our heart, the truth that's in our soul matches up with the truth that we speak, matches up with the truth of how we show up, matches up with the truth of how we talk to ourselves, our thoughts, our emotions. It's when all of that comes together, but we don't get the opportunity to have everything to come together and realize it unless things are apart. And they argue. And they, right? And we light the fire. And we transform through fire. So this was a higher level conversation about who you are. But I really want just spend a moment, and I'm in this too, right? Spend a moment going, where might I be fighting with my own beingness? Instead of allowing that tension to open me to my knowingness. Because that's really the point. Is that even when the tension is internal, even when the thought process is internal of like, I don't like that I'm not working out. I don't like that I'm not meditating every day. I don't like that I've got this drama in my career, or I can't find love in my life, and what's wrong with me? Like, wherever that tension is, what's it showing us? How can I go more towards it and open up to the knowingness on the spiritual realm? Because it's there for us. It may not come in the package you wanted, but it's answering the question you asked. You may just not know you asked it, right? The deep heart question. And so really looking at that, really looking at where we might be exploring that tension between the being and the knowing, and allow ourselves, hi, I'm just making a video, and gift, my husband just got home, and gift ourselves the opportunity to have this integrated knowing in the body, this experience of being and knowing at the same time that's a bit smoother and more connected than fighting. I hope that sparked something in you, and I'd love to hear what it sparked in you, and I will talk to you soon.